Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, we are going to be breaking down embellishments, which are looking the most promising and powerful for the War Within Season 1 for PvP specifically, and which ones should you avoid or are more situational, and which ones are really fun, because there's actually some of them that are very fun. So if you don't know what embellishments are, they're basically extra enchantments that you can put onto crafted pieces of gear. You can see right now on my Balanced Druid's pants, I've crafted the Algari's Competitor's leather trousers, and I have attached an embellishment so that when I dip below 30% health, I will gain a shield of 445,000 damage, and this effect can be triggered once every 4 minutes, but will be reduced by 12 seconds per unique Algari gem. Now, I will tell you after testing that I'm likely going to re-roll this one just because of its limitations due to the Algari gems, but I wanted to use this as an example. If you're wondering how to make this gear, you're going to come to the crafting table, which is in Dornagalis right here in front of this little castle place, and you're going to talk to this little NPC right here. Now, you can craft weapons or armor, and some embellishments are limited depending on what item you are creating. So, for example, with weapons, there is a very desirable embellishment at the moment that can only be placed on weapons. Now, when you go to craft an item, it will ask for a bunch of reagents. You can track these, and it'll track it here on the right. You can go to the auction house and buy those items. The other things that you're going to need for PvP are Forged Gladiators heraldries. You can get these from the Conquest PvP vendor for I think like 175 Conquest each, but you'll also get 9 of them for free, seemingly after around like 4 ranked PvP matches that you win, although it can be random. Some of my characters got 9 of them after the first one. Other ones felt like it took a little bit longer, but you will eventually get 9 of them for free. So, you know, maybe hold off on buying too many of them, at least the first time around until you get those 9 for free. You will also have missives to be able to pick the stats that you want. Make sure that you buy these reagents at their lowest possible cost on the auction house because their quality doesn't matter. This goes for any items here, missives here, or the actual embellishment itself. Just buy the cheapest gold cost because they get pretty expensive when you go into it. But let's start breaking these down. Kind of one for one. The main one for weapon that you're going to want to point out are these Dark Moon card effects, as these are limited to the weapon only. And the main one that you want to be targeting, I think, for most classes is going to be the Dark Sigil Ascension. You're going to gain Ascension every 8 seconds. This is going to grant you 89 of a random secondary stat, stacking up to 10 times. Now, there's another embellishment that you can put onto a secondary piece of gear if you go for this, that you will go for, that basically enhances this effect of a Nerubian weapon, and it just guarantees you a really high value stat, basically, like the entire time. This is like a really safe embellishment, I think. Most players are generally going for this just because it's going to be very low risk as far as selection, and it's going to be valuable basically in all situations. The only time I can see this potentially not being super valuable is if you have a secondary stat that's like entirely undesirable. But for most classes, I think that this is likely the safest one to go for if you're wondering. It isn't to say that there aren't other options, but generally at the moment, at the highest level of competitive play, this is the one that I've seen most players going for. The next one is the Darkmoon Sigil Radiance. Your damaging spells and abilities have a chance to ignite your target with Radiant Focus. After dealing up to 2 million damage to the target, the focused Radiant energies ignite you with radiance, granting you 391 to 800 of your highest secondary stat. So this is a little bit more specific as far as you can target the secondary stat that you want, but it has a high demand in needing to be able to do 2 billion damage single target to a class, which, you know, most classes can get pretty close to. I could see this being pretty decent as well, especially if you wanted to target something like haste specifically on a caster, or versatility if you wanted to make yourself more durable in that sense. So I don't think that this one is completely terrible, but I think Ascension's probably a little bit less risky just because it's always going to be guaranteed to be happening, whether you're getting CC'd or your damage is being stopped or you're unable to get a lot of damage out. It's not going to be terrible, and you can see that they're very similar to each other. Just one lets you select a secondary stat specifically, but I haven't seen a lot of players playing this, so if you wanted to go with this, it's going to be a bit riskier just because it's kind of like untreaded waters as far as I've seen for criticisms and feedback from other players. Another one is the Darkmoon card Symbiosis. This one, effectively, I've seen is not been great because it's basically going to happen once in an arena game. At 10 seconds in combat, you're going to take 1% of your maximum health as nature damage and gain a stack of Symbiosis, which grants you 146 versatility, and it stacks 5 times. But basically, this is up in the opener of a game, and then it's never happening again. So if they changed the frequency on it, it's possible that this one could likely be very competitive with Ascension. But at the moment, based on the fact that you're getting it once in a game, that is a critique that I've seen from Mez, who decided off of this, is that it just ends up not being super powerful. The next one for weapon embellishments is Darkmoon Sigil Vivacity. Your damaging spells and abilities have a chance to grant you Vivaciousness, increasing your secondary stats by 735 and speed or avoidance based on what school it was activated from. So again, you're getting some guaranteed kind of secondary stats. It's just kind of more bursty and not always present, I think, is the main reason why people are going for the Ascension specifically. It's just because it's almost always up, but it could definitely be something worth trying. I'm a bit worried about, like, you know, what school it's activated from. You'd have to test this one, I think, a bit more, because I don't think a lot of people have been running this one specifically. But I think for most part, everyone's going Ascension, and this is basically it for the weapons. Just these 4 Darkmoon oriented ones are coming from that. If we go back to the gear selection specifically, so you can go into armor, you can go into leather. Remember, you're always selecting Algari when you're making crafted gear for PvP, so you can search for leather, and you can see you can make any piece that you want here. Ideally, crafted pieces are going on main slot pieces that aren't tier gear at the moment, just as like a minor tip. But for now, we'll just go into one that I already have, like the pants. Like what would I want to switch if I were having the pants? So another one is the Elemental Focusing Lens, which is your damaging spells and abilities just do bonus damage, but it's based on your sockets. So if you don't have any sockets, this thing does nothing. So there's not a lot of data on this one, but it's not going to be a very good early game embellishment. Could be one worth experimenting with later into the season once you get sockets and more sockets that can actually activate it. But I think, again, this could randomly proc on a pet. It could proc at a time that you don't want it, whereas procking a secondary stat is giving you value on any target that you're hitting, as opposed to on a random target that you can't control. So those are the disadvantages of this one and advantages of the secondary stat weapon ones. Prismatic Nullstone, increase the effectiveness of Blasphemite secondary effects. I honestly don't know what this is, but I don't see anybody running this. I don't even know what a Blasphemite is. If this is like oriented to professions or not, or maybe it's oriented to some sort of consumable, but I have not seen a single player running this. For Captured Starlight, this is the shield when you proc low health. Again, its limitation is that you need sockets. So I was originally thinking, hey, Balance Druid's very squishy. I'm going to get this thing that procs a shield at low health. Historically, this effect has been the most powerful in PvP. Zalzek's Veiled Eye from Battle for Azeroth. The Mechanome Racial, when you get low, you proc a shield. Like, this kind of like auto-procking defensive mechanic is usually very good in PvP, but it's a very long cooldown at 4 minutes. So until you can get more sockets that reduce its cooldown, I don't think its effectiveness is going to be fully realized, but it could be really good in certain situations when you're fighting subtlety rogues, classes that are trying to win in very specific burst windows. So I think this is an item you will craft for those specific moments when you know those classes are in a match with you, in order to try and counter them. But early season, I don't think you're likely going to be wanting this one. Withering Armor Banding effects Embrace the Darkness, double the effects of your Nubian weapon. So this is basically the one that's going to double all the secondary stats that we're getting from a weapon, and you can see how that's good value, right? Like, secondary stats are always valuable because you can control which target they're going to be going on to, as opposed to random damage proccing, and it can give you defensive bonuses, given that, you know, versatility is also a really good defensive stat. So if you are going for the weapon embellishment, you will want to get Writhing Armor Banding as the secondary one on another piece of armor. As a healer, this is the best one. Energy Redistribution Beacon, and I've seen healers getting 2 of this. While above 80% direct healing, you do also redistribute up to 2% of your health to your target. I think running 2 of it could somewhat be risky, because if you get targeted, but healers are so powerful that they can kind of just get away with this. And it's kind of adding to the healers being even more powerful on top of that, because it's really tough to even target them. Like, if you're a Disc Priest, nobody's probably killing you as a Disc Priest. But I've seen even Resto Shamans running this, and Resto Shaman's probably actually one of the few healers that can have a hard time surviving, and Holy Paladins as well. But maybe with the buffs that come into Holy Paladins, that won't be a big deal. But if you're a healer, I think that this is kind of the go-to. You're likely going to want at least 1 of this, but I have seen some healers running 2 of it. For the next one, Pocket Grenades. These just don't do enough significant damage. Again, they're just proc random damage you can't control, so they might not happen at a time that you need it. and they just don't do a lot of damage. So pocket grenades it's kind of off the table as an option for an embellishment. Concealed Chaos Module is actually an insanely good one. This is when you dip low health, you'll shoot mines out of yourself, and if anyone steps on them, they hit for like 500,000 damage each. So it can do millions of amounts of damage in big, like, clustered areas. So if you're a melee class that gets close to enemies, it's good. If you're a caster that knows you're going to be attacked by melee DPS, it's really good. Like, imagine being a Shadow Priest and this Warrior Death Knight on you, and they get you really low health, and you just spit out these mines, they explode, and they all die. You're going to feel pretty happy about that, right? So this one is actually really fun and really good, but it's situational, right? Because if you don't get targeted, it does nothing. Although as Shadow Priest, you could life swap someone low health potentially and trigger it right away. I wonder if that's going to be like tech at all. I really doubt that, but it could be funny if that ended up being a thing. But if you're like Boomkin, who always gets trained, you know you're getting attacked, you're probably going to get value out of this. This is what I want to recraft my shield into. It's like the same effect. Instead of shielding yourself, it just blows everything up around you. It's super fun. Definitely really good in Battlegrounds, but it's not as like conservatively safe as just guaranteed secondary stat value from Ascension, but it is really good. Dark Dawn Thread Lining, well above 80% you gain critical strike. Crit's just not great in PvP. I'm trying to think if there are any classes like scaled directly off of the crit set that this would be decent to get. Like crit scales or crit damage, like maybe Destro Luck could have some significant benefit from this, but you're probably never above 80% if you're a Destro Luck in PvP, so take that into account. But I could see them, because they scale off of crit directly, I think, with their mastery still. But so if you're a Destro, maybe this could be good, but everything else, it's probably going to be pretty meh unless you're running some type of like crit build, which some talents have been reworked. I think even Affliction Lock has some talents now oriented around crit. So if you're doing some like weird cheeky build that's unique, maybe it has a purpose, or a Destro Lock. But other than that, I'm not too sure. The next one that seems to be fairly safe if you don't want to go the weapon route is something like a double Dark Thread Lining. While you're above 80% health, you'll gain versatility. So this is really good as like a counter rogue tech, because when they start attacking you at 100% health in a kidney shot, you're going to mitigate some of that damage. And then if you're ignored, or you know you're fighting these classes that do resets where they kind of burst you and then they run away, you'll get that versatility for the entire time. So this can be really good against like those setup based compositions. It gets value if you're getting attacked by burst damage. Probably not so good if you're fighting against like Shadow Priests or Warlocks that are constantly sustaining their damage and keeping you below that health. So again, this is a situational one that you'll probably build later on in the season. That will probably not scale as well as the mines when they actually do get value, or the Ascension. And that's it. We've got all the embellishments. We covered where we need to go to make them, how you make them. Make sure you buy the cheapest quality mats. Wanted to go over it. So most people are running the Nerubian and the Ascension. Just seems like the safest line of play. Some of these could be later as you get more sockets in the season, situational for like counter melee. And the landmines just do a bunch of damage and are really fun if you want to do that one specifically. And some of them you're probably going to just completely avoid, like the grenades, and other ones that I haven't even seen yet, which are like the Blasphemite. But hope you guys enjoyed this video and discussion about embellishments. Let me know your thoughts about the embellishments that you've tried in the comments down below, because this is still very early, and I feel like these have like the most limited of testing of anything so far. But I wanted to give you my thoughts so far from what I've seen and observed from other players and experienced myself, so that you can start constructing this gear without feeling like you're going down the wrong route. So thank you for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.